Let's take an early look at a few of these Week 11 games, shall we? I'd like to start with the Thursday night game, an unusual Thursday night game. The Indianapolis Colts going on the road to face their division rival, Tennessee. Indianapolis at 6-3 has a 2-game lead over the Titans in the AFC South, but this is a tough game to handicap because both of these teams coming off of terrible losses. The Colts lost 38-8 at home to the St. Louis Rams. The Rams, a team who came into that game with a 3-6 record, starting a backup quarterback in Kellen Clemens. They had yet to win a game with Clemens under center. And again, they totally dominated the Colts in every phase of the game. So where are we now with the Indianapolis Colts? I mean, no doubt they can beat anybody in the league. They've already beaten Denver, Seattle, and San Francisco this season. But that terrible performance against St. Louis Rams last week, their last loss 3 or 4 weeks ago in San Diego, they failed to produce a touchdown. That was another strange result there. And just 2 weeks ago, in that win against the Houston Texans, yes, they came storming back at the end of the game, but at the end of the third quarter, they were behind 24-6 to a Texans team that is officially bad. The wheels have come off in Houston. So you look at their last 8 quarters of football, and 7 quarters, nearly 7 quarters, because they did score a touchdown right at the end of the third quarter in that Houston game, but the better part of 7 quarters, they have been terrible. And so again, what are we to make of the Indianapolis Colts right now? They're going on the road to face the Tennessee Titans, who might have suffered a worse loss last week. Now true, they didn't lose by 30 points, but they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who entering last week's game, many people were saying was potentially the worst team the NFL has ever seen. The Jags had lost their first 8 games, all by double-digit margins. They were 1-7 against the spread. Came into last week's game ranking last in the NFL in points scored, points allowed, yards per game, rushing offense, rushing defense. I mean, we've talked all year about how bad the Jags have been, and indeed, they beat the Titans in Tennessee, a game the Titans absolutely had to have. You look at the Titans now, they're 4-5. Again, 2 games back of Indianapolis for first place in the AFC South. If they'd have been able to beat the Jags, they would only be a game back of first. This would be a huge Thursday night home game when they would have had a chance to take the lead in the division. But because of that loss, even with a win here on Thursday night, they're still going to be trailing the Colts. The Titans' defense dominated in that game, holding the Jags to 214 yards. So it's not the same situation as the Indianapolis-St. Louis game. The Titans were not dominated in all phases of the game. However, they still could not beat a team that many people thought was the worst team in NFL history, and they were very sloppy in that game, turning the football over. They struggled to get anything going offensively until well into the first half anyway, and they lost Jake Locker, their starting quarterback, for the remainder of the season with a Lisfranc injury to his foot. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the Tennessee backup, and Fitzpatrick, I guess, is better than most backups around the NFL because he has extensive starting experience in Buffalo, and he had some pretty good years in Buffalo, but I was burned earlier this season when I actually thought the Titans would improve offensively when Patrick came in there, but back when Fitzpatrick came in there, this was back when Jake Locker was injured for the first time, I believe in week 3, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Fitzpatrick came in and was terrible. Titans, I believe, lost every game with him under center. They improved when Locker got back into the lineup. So what are we to make of this Tennessee offense now with Locker out? I have a feeling we're going to see a very conservative game plan by the Titans in this Thursday night game because Indianapolis really struggles stopping the run. The Colts, 26th in the NFL in rush defense. They're allowing over 126 rushing yards per game. So I think they're going to get a heavy dose of Chris Johnson on Thursday night. Wouldn't be surprised. That is, if things go as planned for the Tennessee Titans, wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Fitzpatrick attempted less than 30 passes in the game. Again, Indianapolis a 3-point favorite on BETDAQ in that game. It's too early for me to have a lean one way or the other there. Very unpredictable game, very difficult to handicap in my opinion. Now, we said the Titans lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. The Jags back in action this week at home against the Arizona Cardinals. The fade Jacksonville train took a temporary pit stop last week, but in my opinion, it is back on the rails this week. The Cardinals only a 6.5-point favorite on BETDAQ. 41 is the total here. Now again, from the outside looking in, if we view the Jags as just a standard run-of-the-mill bad team, then this line makes a lot of sense. After all, Arizona not a great team. They're 5-4. They're a winning team, but certainly not a great team, and they're bad offensively. The Cardinals 27th in the NFL in total offense, that's yards per game. And Arizona has only beaten 2 teams this year by more than 6.5 points, the number they're favored by on Sunday. and both of those wins came at home. So they've yet to win a road game by 7 points or more. The Jags, meanwhile, finally have a little bit of positive momentum after that win in Tennessee last week. Their defense played pretty well in that game. We did mention that Arizona is bad offensively. So, again, you could make some arguments for the Jags as a 6.5-point home favorite if they're your standard run-of-the-mill bad team. I'm still on the page or on the side of the Jags not being your standard run-of-the-mill bad team. I still think this is one of the worst teams the NFL has ever seen. I guess now that they've won a game, and teams like the Detroit Lions a few years ago and the Tampa Bay Bucks in, 1979, those teams finished their seasons winless. So I guess we can't exactly call Jacksonville the worst team in the league anymore. The people who are arguing against that now have some ammo. But you look at this Jags team, still last in the NFL in points scored and points allowed. Their 8 losses have all come by double digits. They have yet to score a touchdown at home this season. Now, they did score a touchdown in the quote-unquote home game that was in London. But as far as games that have actually been played in Jacksonville, the Jags have not scored. They're a terrible, terrible offense, and Arizona a very good defense. The Cardinals rank in the top half of the league in both yards allowed and points allowed. They're especially good against the run. Arizona third in the NFL against the run, allowing only 86.9 yards per game. Don't know if you saw any of that Jacksonville-Tennessee game last week. Now, the Jags couldn't get anything at all going on offense in that game. They finished with 214 total yards. But what they did do offensively, they did with the running of Maurice Jones-Drew. Chad Henne, their quarterback, did not play well at all. But Jones-Drew, even though, again, the stats weren't gaudy by any means, he did find the end zone. He had a couple of nice runs, looked better than he has so far this season. Now, he led the NFL in rushing just a couple of years ago, back in 2011. So we know Maurice Jones-Drew has the potential to be an all-pro type of player. But as we said, Arizona, excellent against the run. So Chad Henne is going to be forced to put the ball in the air in this game. And the Cardinals have some playmakers in that secondary, like cornerback Patrick Peterson, rookie Tyrann Mathieu, who's already shown certainly a knack for creating turnovers and creating general havoc just like he did in college when he was known as the Honey Badger. So I think Arizona is a good-looking play here as a 6.5-point favorite. I know their offense struggles. Might I remind you, Jacksonville last in the NFL in points allowed. And I fully expect this Arizona defense to totally suffocate the Jacksonville offense. So I think the Jaguars' success last week has set up a nice opportunity here where you can back the Cardinals and then only lay a number like 6.5. I suggest taking advantage of that opportunity before the line moves too far in the Arizona direction, because I do anticipate it moving in that direction. Next game I'd like to talk about, maybe one of Sunday's best games, if not Sunday's best game, period. The San Francisco 49ers going to New Orleans to face the Saints. The Saints, a 3.5-point favorite on BETDAQ, 47.5 the total in this game. Now, it appears at first glance this is your classic defense versus offense matchup. We know San Francisco has one of the NFL's best defenses. The Niners had their 5-game winning streak snapped last week by the Carolina Panthers, but don't blame the defense. That defense held Carolina to just 10 points. Panthers pulling out that game 10-9. But you know what? Calling this offense versus defense matchup, that wouldn't entirely be accurate. That's because the New Orleans Saints are playing excellent defense this year themselves. As a matter of fact, statistically, the Saints and the 49ers pretty even as far as defense goes. The most important defensive statistic, of course, is points allowed. 49ers 4th in the league in points allowed, and the Saints 5th. And before you start thinking, or before those of you start saying, because I heard it plenty at the beginning of the season, that this was a fluke performance by the New Orleans defense and the regression to the mean would happen soon. After all, the New Orleans defense did allow more yards than any defense in NFL history last season, so it was a little odd throughout the first few weeks to see them playing so well on that side of the ball. But folks, we're in week 11 now. This is no fluke. This is no small sample size oddity or anything like that. This is an excellent defense. Last week, they dominated an excellent Dallas Cowboys offense, limiting the Cowboys to less than 200 total yards. And San Francisco has had problems offensively this season, especially in the passing game. The 49ers last in the NFL in passing offense right now. Colin Kaepernick has some deficiencies as a pocket passer. Defensive coordinators have caught on to that, and that has been exposed over the last few weeks. Last week in that 10-9 loss to Carolina, Kaepernick passed for less than 100 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Now, I think the 49ers are going to try to pound the football here. The Saints are not great against the run. So I think we're going to see a lot of Frank Gore in this game, maybe some read option. We might see Colin Kaepernick run the football a little bit, which he hasn't done a whole lot this season. I have an early lean towards New Orleans here. As I mentioned, New Orleans defense playing just about as well as San Francisco defense this year, and their offense much, much better. As a matter of fact, there's only one offense in the NFL better than New Orleans. That is the Denver Broncos. The Saints rank second to Denver in total yards per game, points per game, and passing offense. Last week, they set an NFL record against the Dallas Cowboys with 40 first downs, set a franchise record with 625 total yards, and here they are in the Superdome once again. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, San Francisco, they're going to be able to run the football, and their defense is going to be extremely motivated after losing that game to the Carolina Panthers last week. They can be as motivated as they want. I'm not sure it's going to matter. I don't think any defense can really shut down the New Orleans Saints, especially in the Superdome. Might I remind you, the Saints 22-5 against the spread their last 27 home games, despite the fact they've been favored in 25 of those 27 games. That is incredible. Generally always a good idea to back the Saints at home. I don't think this week is any exception. The Saints are especially good at home against good teams. The last 18 times the Saints have faced a winning team at home, they are 15-3 against the spread in those games. So it's difficult for me to turn away from New Orleans as only a 3.5-point favorite on Sunday against San Francisco, even though it is early. All these opinions, of course, subject to change over the next few days. But as of right now, I do have a strong New Orleans lean in that situation. Let's move on to the Sunday night game. The undefeated Kansas City Chiefs going on the road to face the Denver Broncos. Chiefs with a one-game lead on Denver in the AFC West. People have been pointing to this game for a long time. Those people who have thought the Chiefs aren't really for real, aren't as good as their record would indicate, they've been pointing at this game, the Chiefs' road trip to Denver, as a time when it would all end for Kansas City. And most people seem to be on that page. As we said, the Broncos, a 9.5-point favorite on BETDAQ, despite the fact the Chiefs are undefeated and have the best defense in the NFL in terms of points allowed. And Denver's been trending in the wrong direction recently. You look at the Broncos' last 3 games. They lost the Indianapolis Colts 3 games ago. Then they fell behind the Washington Redskins, a bad team. The Redskins held a lead into the second half of that game before Denver turned it around and ended up winning and covering. And then last week the Broncos, even though, again, they beat the San Diego Chargers, they covered by a point. They were 7-point favorites, so won by 8. But it was the first time they had failed to score 30 points this season. And San Diego, not a particularly good defense. They're especially bad in the secondary. The Chargers entered that game ranked 28th in pass defense. Kansas City leads the NFL in points allowed. They're top 5 in total defense, pass defense, and run defense. They lead the NFL in sacks. And Peyton Manning, not only is he banged up, he has ankle problems right now. He won't admit publicly which ankle is giving him problems. But if you saw the end of last week's game, if you saw how much pain he was in on the field after taking what appeared to be a fairly routine tackle, you know all is not right with Peyton Manning. The Kansas City Chiefs lead the NFL in sacks, as we said. Denver has had all kinds of injury problems on the offensive line. They've had increasing trouble protecting Manning as the year has gone along. As we mentioned, Manning dinged up right now with those lower leg injuries. You never know. If the Chiefs get after Manning and rough him up a little bit early in this game, throughout his career, Manning has always had problems when under pressure, like most quarterbacks, of course. But he's just so masterful. He's like an offensive coordinator on the field. He can diagnose that pressure before it comes. Frequently, it seems like he knows what the defense is going to do before the defense does it. And so you always see him audibling at the line of scrimmage, changing the play. He's probably the best in the NFL at getting the ball out of his hands quickly to avoid taking those sacks and avoid taking those hits. I'm just not sure he's going to be able to do that on Sunday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. All that being said, am I prepared to back the Chiefs here? Am I prepared to recommend the Chiefs as a 9.5-point underdog in Denver? Not sure I'm there yet. The Broncos' weakness on defense is in the secondary, and I'm not sure the Chiefs are going to be able to attack that weakness. Kansas City, 27th in the NFL this year in passing offense. And don't know if you heard, but last night the Chiefs' number 1 wide receiver, Dwayne Bowe, was arrested for marijuana possession in Kansas City. We've yet to hear whether he's going to play Sunday. The NFL sure to suspend him at some point in the future. Probably won't suspend him by Sunday. So if there's going to be any action taken, it's most likely going to be taken by the Chiefs organization. But they very well might take action. They might suspend him for a quarter, a half, the whole game. And again, he is the Chiefs' go-to wide receiver. So the Chiefs, they like to run the football. They're going to be going right into the strength of that Denver defense. The Broncos, 4th in the NFL this year against the run. No doubt some of that is because so many opponents have had to throw the ball against Denver because they've been so far behind. But if you've seen Denver play, you know they are much better against the run than they are against the pass. So I'm just not sure that Kansas City offense is going to be able to properly attack the Denver defense. And even if the Chiefs defense is successful against Denver, what does success mean? If they held the Broncos to, say, 24 points, I think everybody would say, yes, that's a success. The Broncos average 41 points per game. They haven't been held to 24 points all season. But will 24 points be enough for Kansas City to win this game? Might be enough for them to cover, but I'm not sure it's going to be enough for them to win. Anyway, 49.5 the total in that game. Be a very, very interesting game on Sunday night in Denver. A game, no doubt, we'll talk about a lot more throughout the week. Final game I'd like to talk about here quickly, the Monday night game. Very, very intriguing game. The New England Patriots going on the road to face the Carolina Panthers. Carolina riding a 5-game winning streak. They now sit at 6-3 this season. Coming into last week, when they were going on the road to face the San Francisco 49ers, the question about Carolina was who have they beaten? Are they for real? The Panthers had won 4 straight games. They were 5-3 heading into last week, but their best win was against the St. Louis Rams, who were 3-6. The Panthers had not beaten another team that had won as many as 3 games. That all changed last week when they pulled out a nice road win in San Francisco. The Panthers might have the single best defense in the NFL. They're currently 2nd in points allowed, also 2nd in yards allowed. They also rank in the top 4 in rushing defense and passing defense. There is no weakness on this Carolina defense. For my money, the best defensive player I've seen in football this year is Luke Kuechly, Carolina linebacker. Now, I know he's no secret to Carolina fans or anybody who watches the Panthers play with any regularity, but I'm not sure if you polled 500 NFL fans, just chosen at random, I'm not sure how many would name Luke Kuechly as the single best defensive player in the NFL, but I think he might be just that. This guy is awesome, and if you haven't seen him play, be sure to tune in on Monday night. He will be all over the field in this game against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Now, Carolina's problem is their offense, and it is a problem. Make no mistake, Cam Newton in that passing game right now is the weak link of this team. Now, some of it is Newton. No doubt he's not a great pocket passer. Some of it is the lack of weapons around Newton. Steve Smith, Carolina's #1 wide receiver, and really their only premier wide receiver. And Smith is 34 years old now, might not have all the explosiveness that he had a couple of years ago. No doubt the big play has gone from the Carolina offense. And when Newton took the league by storm 2 years ago as a rookie, so much of what Carolina did offensively was based around the big play. That was so frequently Newton to Steve Smith. And again, that has been largely phased out of the offense. Carolina, one of the worst passing offenses in the NFL, and even though they beat San Francisco last week, they only managed 10 points. Cam Newton was not good at all in that football game. Carolina likes to run the ball, and that might work out against the New England Patriots because since New England lost defensive tackle Vince Wilfork and linebacker Gerard Mayo, they have not been good against the run. You remember 3 weeks ago in that surprising loss to the New York Jets, the Jets really pounded it right at the Patriots, rushed for over 170 yards. Patriots could not stop what they were doing. In the last 2 games, the stats look better, but New England has faced 2 teams that do not run the ball very well at all, the Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So has New England improved, shored up that run defense over the last couple of weeks? Or has it just been a product of their schedule? Have they faced teams that haven't really been committed to running the football, which Miami and Pittsburgh certainly aren't? We're going to find out this week because Carolina is committed to running the football. Jonathan Stewart back now, so that D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart 1-2 punch back in full effect. And Newton can run the ball. He does have deficiencies as a passer, but he's one of the best runners, if not the best runners of the football among the NFL's 32 starting quarterbacks. So it'll be an interesting test for the New England Patriots defensively, whether or not they can hold up against this Carolina running game. If they can, you got to like the Patriots here as an underdog, because even though Carolina is great on defense, and I just said they might be the best defense in the NFL, are they going to limit this Tom Brady-led offense below? Are they going to hold this offense below 17 to 20 points? I'm clearly starting to trip over my words here a little bit at the 20-minute mark. I don't think they're going to. Listen, I think this New England offense has awakened. I think it's going to be much better over the second half of the season. They had big problems the first half of the season, no doubt about it. Rob Gronkowski, Tom Brady's favorite target, was not a part of the offense, sitting out rehabbing that injury. Danny Amendola was in and out of the lineup. Brady clearly hasn't developed the sort of relationship with Amendola that he has with Gronkowski, or he had with somebody like Wes Welker over the last few years. But aside from Gronkowski, Amendola is clearly their best pass-catching option in New England. And with those guys back in the lineup now, I think this Patriots team is going to start to take the look of some of the Patriots team in years past, where the offense carries them and the defense is suspect. Because as we mentioned, they have suffered some injuries to that defense. I do expect their defense to continue to regress. Early in the season, the Patriots defense was playing better than their offense, but as we said, as injuries have taken their toll on the defense, and as the offense started to get a little healthier, I think we might see those roles reverse. In their last game, New England hung 55 points on the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is the most points anybody has ever scored on the Steelers in the history of their franchise. Very unexpected performance. Pittsburgh entered that game ranking top 5 in the league in both total defense and passing defense. And again, the Patriots just no trouble hanging 55 points on them. I'd be stunned if New England hangs 55 points on the Carolina Panthers. I'd be surprised if they even got half that many. However, Carolina, again, with big problems offensively, if they're able to run the football, if New England is not able to stop the Panthers from doing what they want in terms of running the ball between the tackles, if Carolina tops, say, 160, 170 rushing yards in this game, going to be tough for New England to win, because I do have a lot of respect for that Carolina defense. But I don't know. New England is coming off a bye. Bill Belichick knows very well that he's about to face a flawed offense. Expect Belichick to try to force Cam Newton to beat the Patriots with his arm. And if this comes down to Cam Newton versus Tom Brady, I don't care that Carolina has a better defense. I'm going to side with Brady in that situation. So I think I have an early lean towards New England in that game. But again, I'm just very excited for that game. I do believe this will be the classic offense versus defense matchup. I do believe the Patriots offense is maybe not back to what they once were, but back to playing at a very high level. And the Panthers, as we said, maybe the best defense in the entire NFL. So that should be a really good one. Not the only really good one, of course. We've mentioned 4 others here, and there are many more this week. We preview every game here on BETDAQ NFL, so we do hope you check back with us over the course of the week. If you have any comments or suggestions in regard to the site, I can be reached anytime. John@BETDAQNFL.com. That is JOHN@BETDAQNFL.com. Follow us on Twitter @BETDAQNFL, and we'll follow you back. Until then, for BETDAQ NFL, I'm John Arnette.